over these many years, it's oftentimes been said we have to know who we are and we have to know what we do. It's also been said that these many countless stories that have been told are like links in a chain that has no beginning and no end. But it's time to close another of those links and begin another. Over these last days, the metaphor of the making of bread has been used to bring us to a point where we began to explore the nature of the fire that we all have that bakes the dough of our accumulated experiences to make wisdom into the bread that nurtures not only ourself but has the potential to nurture all of life. And there are 3 old and very favorite Sufi anecdotes that sum up the qualities of this fire before another Sufi anecdote that leads us into the next link of our inquiry. The first is that simple anecdote of the 2 Arabs sitting on the side of the road, smoking their hashish hubble-bubble pipe, when suddenly a camel lumbers by, and one Arab says to the other, "Friend, what does that remind you of?" And the other one replies, "Food." And the first Arab, shocked by this answer, replies, "But we're Arabs, we don't eat camel." And his friend said, "But everything reminds me of food." And the second is that story of the dervish who'd been with his Sufi Sheikh for decades. Every day he'd come from his work and he'd sweep the courtyards and sit and listen to his Sheikh's dissertations. And in that time he'd watched many people have transcendental experiences and be guided to go out and teach or do good works. But he never had any of these things, and he always longed for confirmation and experience. One day, as he was returning home, he was accosted by a group of bandits with knives in their hand, and he knew that in their intent to rob him, that they would kill him. So he ran as fast as he could until he came to the edge of a cliff and had no further to go. Facing his death, he knew his only recourse was to jump. And so he did. And as he was falling, he called out with all his being, "Oh God, help me!" And suddenly a hand appeared, a hand that he knew so well. He'd seen that hand gesticulating over the many decades. It was the hand of his Sufi master, which caught him gently and placed him at the base of the cliff, unharmed. He ran as fast as he could back to his Sufi Sheikh to thank him. "Thank you, Master." But he couldn't help himself. He had to ask, "But Master, why have I never had an experience like this before?" And his master replied, "And why have you not called on God like this before. And the third anecdote is the story of that day when the Sufi Sheikh got his followers together because it was a festival day. So he decided to take them out on a picnic. When all the preparations were made, he gathered all his followers together and he told them, "Now, I want you to go and take a live chicken and slaughter and defeather it for our festival feast. But it is said that you must do so in a place where there is no presence." All of his followers went off, and one by one they came back with their plucked chickens. And the day passed, and the afternoon sun was waning, when finally the last follower came with a live chicken under his arm. Everyone laughed and decried him. And the master said, "Wait, let him speak." And so the follower with his live chicken said, "I went to my house. I pulled down all the shutters and closed the doors, but there was a presence. I went into a closet, but there also was a presence. I went deep into the forest to find a place of quiet, and there was a presence. I went into a deep cave, and there was presence. There is nowhere that can be found when there is not this presence." So there we have what could be said are the three qualities of this fire. The fire that everything has, the movement of life. We can never forget. Everything reminds us of it. It burns with the intensity of that call that is made when the follower was falling over the cliff. Unabated, this call, this intensity of life. And thirdly, this place where there is always presence. This fire that we have, it could be said, in any moment bakes the dough that nourishes our soul and life. But closing off this link, what is the beginning of the next link of these endless stories that is now opened? A similar story to the last story. The Sufi Sheikh who gathers his followers together on a festival day, invites them to a feast. The tables are laid with all the accoutrements, all those things that are there ritualistically. And then he asks his followers to go out and gather flowers to adorn the tables. All of them go out to the fields And one by one they come back with an assortment of flowers, until finally the one last follower comes back holding in his hand dead branches, flowers that were drooping, their heads hung low, even stalks, dead stalks, and everyone laughed and decried him, calling him Abdal, Abdal, which in their language meant idiot or fool. And again the Sufi master says, wait, let him speak. And the man stood up and said, I went out into the field, and there all the flowers, the leaves, the branches were dancing in worship, and I could not dare disturb their devotions. But then I found these that had completed their prayers, their songs of love and devotion. So this is why I gathered them. What could this story mean for us as it leads us into the next phase, opens the next link of our endless chain? Acknowledging that fire and its qualities, we cannot forget it, ever. The intensity of our life is such that it's like a constant call. And presence, there is nowhere that it's not. What could this last anecdote mean as it leads us into another inquiry? What comes next? Recognizing that when we know who we are, we need to know what we do.